Welcome to Thursday Thoughts, your weekly dose of real, honest conversation on all things personal growth. These are the chats Lucy and I love having every week over on Instagram. They're unfiltered, unedited, and always rooted in practical tools and a dose of inspiration. Let's dive in. So anyway, this morning we're going to be talking about some of our favourite, some non-fiction books, which I think have had a bit of an impact on us. And I mean, I was quickly going through my bookshelves just now going, right, Claire, let's see if I can pick a few out. I'd be interested to see if how many of ours will be the same. So do you want to start with your idea, Lisa?
Yeah.
You go for it.
Okay, so basically, I've got 4 physical books in front of me, but there are
so do I.
So there are 2 others that I wanted to mention actually. So maybe I'll mention How should we do this? Shall I mention the 2 that I don't have in front of me before I forget them?
Yeah, go for it.
And these wouldn't necessarily be my kind of number 1 and number 2, but anyway, the first one is a book called As a Man Thinketh. Have you heard of it, Polly?
No.
As a Man Thinketh, and it's by James somebody. I've completely forgotten his bloody name, but it's a very, very, very short, very thin book. It's quite old-fashioned. And in fact, it's similar to another one that I've got here in front of me. This book here called The Power of Awareness by Neville Goddard. And both of them, James, whoever, As a Man Thinketh, and Neville Goddard, they're both very, very short books. But they're kind of classics as far as I'm concerned, particularly, well, both of them actually, but The Power of Awareness is a brilliant, brilliant, brilliant book that talks about exactly that, the thing that we talk about all the goddamn time. The power of awareness, the power of our mind, the power of focus, the power of belief, all of these things that we talk about. So if anybody, but it is quite old-fashioned, but I don't mind reading a book that is written in an old-fashioned way. It doesn't particularly bother me. And The Power of Awareness and As a Man Thinketh are both written in a kind of old-fashioned way, but they're both, as I say, really short, really, really worth reading if you just want to hear, because this is the thing, these sort of ideas, these concepts that you and I talk about all the time, in other words, how much more power and control we have over our lives through the thoughts that we're thinking and the beliefs that we have. Like, these are ideas and concepts that have been around for thousands of years. People have been talking about these kinds of ideas for so long. So many great thinkers and philosophers, from Einstein to Neville Goddard and loads and loads of other people. They all kind of all rivers lead back to the same ocean, as far as I'm concerned. So many of these books that I've got here are basically, in fact, all of them, I would say, are talking about the same concepts, but they're talking about it in a different way. And essentially, it's the power of the mind. So I'll just quickly run through the other ones. So, and then we can maybe go into a bit of detail and about some of them. But an absolute classic, just to hold this one up, is Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. In fact, I've got 2 Napoleon Hill books here. Anyone who hasn't heard of Napoleon Hill, I mean, he really is the kind of godfather of sort of success and mastery and fulfilling your potential. Think and Grow Rich is an absolute classic. It is not it's not just about getting rich, it's just about living your best possible life. And I mean, it is, there are certain chapters in this book that are very, very, very heavy, but it is absolutely brilliant. I mean, the kind of subtitle is The All-Time Masterpiece on Unlocking Your Potential. And I even talk about Napoleon Hill in my book because I love him so much. And particularly, I talk about his other book here, just holding this one up too, which is called Outwitting the Devil. Have you read this?
Yeah.
Oh my God. So Outwitting the Devil might be my favorite book ever. I literally talk about it in my own book. And what I find is just so, and in fact, this book, you'll probably know this, but this book didn't come out until after he died. Because his wife, was really worried about it because she knew that the impact that it would have and the kind of backlash that it would have. So it wasn't actually published until God, I don't know, I thought it said it on the front, but anyway, it wasn't published in his lifetime, but it's another classic. And it's called Outwitting the Devil, and it's written from the perspective, so basically it's written from the perspective of him having a conversation with, quote, the devil. And it is just brilliant. And basically, he talks about, it's very difficult to know how to kind of condense this book into a few sentences, but one of the main themes of this book is the fact he refers to drifters, right? People who are drifting through life without intention and without purpose. And he basically has a go at the education system, churches, all of these things, which is why it was such a kind of risky book at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But honestly, it is one of the best books I have ever read. And it really makes you think about humans and the way that we're living our lives. So I would hugely recommend Outwitting the Devil and Think and Grow Rich, both by Napoleon Hill. And then the final one that I've got here in front of me, which is one of my favorite books ever, we did it in my book club, is You're a Badass by Jen Sincero.
I got that one too.
Yeah. You're a Badass is the reason why You're a Badass is so brilliant, and it's such a good starting point. So if you're the kind of person who is perhaps a bit cynical about, self-help, spirituality, all of this stuff, but you're curious and you're kind of like, I don't know, I quite like to find out, I quite like to sort of open my mind to this stuff. The brilliant thing about You're a Badass is that, I mean, not least that Jen Sincero was absolutely hilarious, and her writing is very, very funny. And what she does is she kind of writes self-help in a really down-to-earth, relatable, funny way. But she also covers all of the things that we talk about. It's basically very woo-woo. But what Jen Sincero does is she says, look, I was a complete fucking cynic myself. She was like 40 years old, essentially living in a garage, didn't have any money, eating like tuna out of the tin, was just like, what the hell? What is wrong with me? I need to sort my life out. And so she kind of got to a point where she was like, I'm really, really cynical about going down this road of, personal growth and development, but what have I got to lose? So she kind of started throwing herself into all things woo and all of these kinds of books here. And in fact, another book that she talks about, which I've also read, is called The Science of Getting Rich by Wallace D. Wattles. She talks about that book at the very beginning of her book. And basically, so she is hilarious. And she sort of, talks about reading that book and just thinking, God, fuck this shit. What a load of bollocks. But to cut a long story short, she starts going down this route of exploring the power of the mind, personal growth and development, all of this stuff. And as a result, she completely turns her life around, changes her life. So if you're somebody who is a little bit cynical, but is also curious about all of this stuff that you and I talk about, Jen Sincero's You're a Badass is a really, really, really good place to start. In fact, if you're not sort of in the mood for like Napoleon Hill, who is quite heavy and quite dense, I would definitely recommend Jen Sincero as a starting point. So, I mean, the other one that I wanted to mention actually is The Daily Stoic, by Ryan Holiday.
I've got that one as well. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like a page a day. And I really love Stoicism because it's a philosophy. I always feel like the kind of core of Stoicism is basically saying the only thing you have control over is yourself. So why are you letting all of these external things get to you? Because all you have control over is your own mind, your own behaviors, your own thoughts and feelings and actions, essentially. So The Daily Stoic is a really good one. It's just a page a day, and it just sort of reinforces a different point of Stoicism every day. And I think it's really, really good. So yeah.
Yeah, well, interestingly, I've got You Are a Badass as well by Jen Sincero here, because I'm probably unlike you. I like an easy read. I have really struggled, maybe because of family, kids, busyness, to read. So I need an easy read over, for the last 20 years, I've really needed to have some easy reads. And I have read the Napoleon Hill books, but I found them quite heavy going.
Yeah,
and much more difficult to read. So for me, I'll go for the lightheartedness, for the funny, and Jim Sinclair does that so brilliantly.
Yeah.
It's easy language, it's easy to understand, she'll make you laugh. I love her real down to earth approach to all of it.
Yeah.
And it just all makes sense. It makes sense
Yeah.
straight away. So I really would recommend that book to everyone. It's an easy, you can take what you want from it, but more than anything, it's actually a really enjoyable read,
It's brilliant.
more than anything. The book which I kind of came back, it was funny because I was thinking about books which have had most impact on me. And I think one of the first books, and it was when I was doing a coaching course, which they recommended to read, was The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg.
I've
And I
never read that.
which is a great book. It's about habits, and it's about learning about what a habit is. It's about, we have the triggers and then we react to that. But there are so many books on habits since then, which I have read. So there's his book he's like kind of almost like the founder of habits. And then you've got BJ Fogg, who's written the book Tiny Habits, which is all about breaking it down to the smallest amount of, the smallest actions. And he has done a lot of research about habits. He's a Stanford professor. But then the book, which I think probably had the biggest impact, was Atomic Habits by James Clear, because again, he just makes it so relatable.
Yeah.
It's very practical. It's like, it's psychology based. And I just really think this book, it exploded when it came
Yeah.
out
It's huge.
because,
Huge.
because of that, because it's just so clear. And it just really talks about how habits, he introduces the idea that habits have this compounding effect. So small improvements that we can make in our lives have these extraordinary results over time. So he often talks about how, these really small wins are life-changing, as the other two authors I've mentioned. But James Clear just puts it into everyday relatable life. And he talks quite a lot about identity in this book as well, which I think really relates to, for example, what Jen Sinclair says in her book, You're a Badass. It's all about who are you being? Who are you surrounding yourself with?
Yeah.
You need to step into that person that you want to become in order to achieve what you are setting yourself out to achieve. And I think, I really like that bit about that book. So yes, if anyone hasn't read Atomic Habits, I highly recommend it, because it really does help you and motivate you to see that actually you can, just by taking the smallest action forward, which is often what we talk about as well, right? Small actions forward, how actually it has this incredible effect. He uses the example in there, which I've used so many times, is if you're flying, a pilot flying a plane, if they are even just half a degree out on their flight path, they're going to land up somewhere totally different. So these tiny little actions are so significant. So yes, love that book. Another book which has had a really big impact on me is this book, The Body Keeps the Score.
I've never read that one.
By Bessel van der Kolk, which I like this because it kind of really relates to some of the work that I do. It really was a groundbreaking exploration of its time, it's about how trauma lives in the body, not just in the mind. And I think that was quite groundbreaking at the time when he wrote this book. He really does blend the whole of sort of neuroscience, psychology, all of it together. And I just really enjoyed it, because I think anybody who feels like they've, they can't quite move forward, it's probably because you've got all this stuff stuck into your body. And actually, he talks about how your nervous system needs to feel safe in order for you to move forward. And for me, it really blends that whole mindset and that somatic work, which I know is so powerful. You asked me actually on the last Monday Motivation about, how can breath work help with letting go? And actually, I don't think I gave a very good answer. I thought about it, how I could have explained that better since. And I think, this is what Bessel van der Kolk explains in his book as well, is how it's when we're in our fight or flight, when we're in our sympathetic side of our nervous system and we're holding on to stuff so deeply, and those patterns have been stuck in our body through holding our breath or for a trauma response. actually it's impossible to make a change. Your body isn't able to release that thing, that hurt, that trauma, that old belief, whatever it is that you had
Mm.
at that time created about yourself, if it's not feeling safe. So what we need to try and do is create an environment of safety within the body. So that is a signal to your mind, okay, I'm ready to release this now. And
Mm.
then we can release it. And then when we get into that feeling of safety, actually we can then sort of reprogram the mind that, okay, we can let that go and we can let a new, more empowering belief come in. And only then will your body accept it, because it's actually, okay, I'm okay, this is safe. I
Mm.
don't need to hold on to this anything anymore. I hope that makes a little bit more
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
sense.
No, it does. It does. Absolutely does.
So yeah, it's kind of just this book. It just gives you a why you feel like you do. Especially if you felt for years that something's wrong with you, and actually it's he just explains really clearly about how trauma can get stuck in the body, and then he just talks about different ways that it's possible to release it. So
Mm.
lots of somatic way exercises. He talks about EMDR. He talks about breath work, all sorts of things. So that
Mm.
was another one. And then one which I just picked out of my bookshelf just now because I really enjoyed it, and again because it was a really easy read, and it's really helped me with all this, because it just validate really all the things I do, which is a book called Unstressable by Mo Gaudet and Alice Law.
Oh,
And
do you know, I've heard him on podcasts and he really irritates me. I
I
don't know what it is about him.
really.
Yeah, I literally, I've heard him on multiple podcasts, and there is just something. I mean, this is just me being ridiculous, I'm sure. But, anyway, for whatever reason, I do not vibe with him at all.
Oh, well, I like him, and I like him because he brings the science to all of this kind of stuff about stress, about overthinking, about being overwhelmed. Or he brings the science, and Alice, who he wrote the book with, who's absolutely lovely, she brings a bit more of the sort of softness about actually how to, she's more about the energetics and the emotional intelligence side of it.
Mm.
And again, I just found this book really practical. There was just, I liked it because for me, it kind of, again, it very much reflects me. I like the science, I like a little bit of the woo, but I also like the practical steps,
Mm.
tangible steps forward that you can take. And for me, I just really felt like it was giving solutions. It wasn't just saying, this is the science. It actually was really giving the solutions.
Yeah.
So for me, it was, I think I listened to it, but I did buy it afterwards because again, I actually listen to most of my books
So do I. I do both.
rather than reading.
I will only ever recommend brands that I know, love, and use myself. And one of those is Ancient and Brave. Honestly, they've become part of my daily habits. The very first thing I do every morning is pour myself a big glass of water with their true hydration in it. It feels like such a simple ritual, but it really sets me up for the day. And I know I'm properly rehydrating with their blend of electrolytes and minerals, especially before I exercise, which I always do in the morning. Then later on, when I make my coffee, I stir in their true collagen powder into the coffee. Now, it blends in straight away, no fuss, there's no taste, and collagen is something we naturally lose as we age, but it's so important for our skin, joints, and overall vitality. Now, I'll be honest, Ancient and Brave may cost a little more than some of the tubs you'll spot on supermarket shelves, but the difference is you're getting the highest quality ingredients, sourced with integrity and tested to a higher standard, and absolutely no nasties added. That's why I trust them and why I think they're worth every penny. And because I want you to be able to try them out for yourself, I've got a special offer for you. As a listener of this podcast, you can get 20% off your very first order. All you need to do is click the link in the show notes and pop in the code POLYW20 at checkout. They've got more than just collagen and hydration too. They've got creatine, they've got blends, supplements. So it's a perfect chance to explore their range and make the most of that 20% off.
Funny enough, that's something I was going to bring up actually, and say, and in fact, especially going back to Outwitting the Devil, because I think in many ways and in quite a lot of cases, especially when they're read by the author, not that one is, but I think listening to non-fiction books can be just as good, if not in some ways better than reading the actual hard copy. And it's just, I've just suddenly thought of a few more books I just have to mention.
Go on.
Just read. And in fact, what I wanted to do first is just quickly read, because I gave such a crappy summary of all of the books that I mentioned. I just want to read the back, a little bit on the back of Outwitting the Devil, because I cannot stress enough how fucking amazing this book is. So just quickly, it says, in 1938, just after publication of his all-time bestseller, Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill reveals that he broke the devil's code, forcing him to confess his secrets. The resulting manuscript, Outwitting the Devil, proved so controversial it was hidden for over 70 years. Sharon Lecter brings us this important book, annotating and editing it for contemporary audience. Using his legendary ability to get to the root of human potential, Hill digs deep to identify the greatest obstacles we face in reaching our personal goals, including fear, procrastination, anger, and jealousy, as tools orchestrated by the devil himself. These hidden methods of control can lead us to ruin, and Hill reveals the 7 principles of good that will allow us to finally triumph over them and succeed. And essentially, why it's so brilliant, it's basically saying we live in a society that tells us that we should be this, we should be doing that, we should be doing that, and it's basically saying no, you got it all wrong. I love it. Please read Outwitting the Devil. And the other couple of books I just wanted to mention are in fact, 2 of the first personal growth books I ever read were The Power of Consistency by Weldon Long, I think his name is. And, you and I have talked about consistency on this, on Monday Motivation many times. That's a really good read. And also the thing that got me into my morning routine is The Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod.
Oh, I love that too. Yes.
Yeah,
that's
The Miracle Morning. It's so brilliant. And literally, I think that was the first book I read when I was kind of starting out on this journey. And I've always loved Hal Elrod. He's got a podcast called Achieve Your Goals. He's written more than one book. And it's just, if you're wanting to cultivate a morning routine, definitely read The Miracle Morning, because it's kind of like, one of the sort of originals, and it's really, really good. And I just really love him. He's a really cool guy. And the other book that I just had to quickly mention before I forget is a brand new book by Matt Cook called Beyond Wanting, who
I'm reading it listening to it at the moment, loving it.
It's amazing. Yes. Yeah. I mean, I love it so much that I was compelled to actually do a reel on Instagram about it a couple of weeks ago. Literally the week that it came out, once I'd read it, I did a reel saying how much I loved it. And I love Matt Cook, not least because he's been on my podcast twice, so I kind of know him a bit, and I think he's a really, really lovely guy. But Beyond Wanting it's called The Art of True Manifestation is the subtitle. So this book is about manifestation, no mucking about, no trying to kind of hide that word, as so many of these other books do, by the way. Apparently, in Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill, I can't remember whether it was whether he wasn't allowed to use the word manifestation, but there was something that he wasn't allowed to say because it was just considered to be too woo, and therefore people just wouldn't take it seriously. Anyway, Matt Cook, on the other hand, is all over it, and that's why I love it. And if you want to learn about manifestation, if you are ready to drop the cynicism and go, hang on a minute, maybe there is something to this, P.S. there is, read this book, because it is, he's just laid it out so well. He's basically said, this is what you need to do. And also what I love about Matt Cook is that here's just a bit about his background. So he used to be an estate agent. He was like a manager in an estate agent's, right? Living a life that he just wasn't particularly happy with. And he knew there was more for him, but he was just kind of stuck, like so many of us are. And he basically was visited by his mum, who died 18 months previously. One night he was lying in bed, he was not asleep, and he basically heard his mum talking to him. And as a result, he started kind of delving into all of the kind of woo-woo stuff because he was like, what the hell just happened? And he wanted to find out more. And he started, and this is how he came across manifestation. And then he just became completely obsessed with it and just started learning about all the things. You know, he will no doubt have read all of these books, I should imagine. But what is so brilliant about Matt is that he was one of those people who was like, manifestation, schmation, what a load of crap. And he needed to have a scientific explanation. He needed to understand how this worked. So he talked a lot about kind of quantum physics and the science behind it, as well as the kind of very woo-woo side of it. But Beyond Wanting is truly worth a read if you want to understand how you can actually start to manifest things in your life. Because I think what we have to realize is that manifestation isn't some kind of crazy thing that, you know, crazy people are talking about. It's actually how life works. Like, we're all manifesting all of the time, whether we know it or not, whether we like it or not. And actually, in very simple terms, manifestation means essentially bringing something into your life. That's what it is. Manifestation is, I talk about manifestation in terms of it's making shit happen. And it's a combination of knowing what you want, believing that it's possible for you, and then the thing that was left out in The Secret, which is taking the action. So it's not magic, although there are elements of magic about it, if you like. But it's really just making shit happen. And the funny thing is that, say, for, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, and so many of these kind of older books, they're saying the exact same thing. They're talking about the exact same concepts and principles as Matt Cook is talking, in 2025 in a book about manifestation. So anyway, I would really recommend that. And also, going back to audiobooks, I, like you, Polly, I listen to many, many books. I think it is such a great thing to be able to do, because you can just consume more. Like, if I only read physical books, I wouldn't read half as much as I do. Some people think that's a good thing. Some people think that's a bad thing. But what I also tend to do is, if I really love something that I've listened to, I will buy the hard copy, as I've done with Beyond Wanting, and then I listen and read at the same time. And in fact, in my book club, in my membership, that's how I read all of the books, because I do like podcast summaries of all our books. And I find that actually the best way to kind of ingest a book is to read and listen at the same time, because somehow that focuses your mind when you're listening and reading. That, I find, is the most effective way of consuming a book. And I think this is more about non-fiction than fiction, but do you know what I mean?
Yes, I totally agree. I mean, because when you're listening, when I'm listening to a book, I'm often not walking the dog, or I'm out and about. And actually, sometimes you tend to miss quite a lot. But yes, if I can, I would. But I just want to mention one last book, which I did mention before, which I honestly have given to so many people now. Don't Believe Everything You Think by Joseph Nguyen. It is the best little tiny book, and it's only 2.5 hours on an audio book, and it's so useful it says, why your thinking is the beginning and end of suffering. It just really is about awareness of your thoughts, how to just free up some space in your mind. And it's very simple. My 19-year-old has read it twice and has said it has been absolutely transformational in the way that he thinks about his mind. I'm giving it to anybody who is telling me that they're feeling overwhelmed, that they've got too much on their plates. It is a really, really good little book, very easy to read. So yes, get that book. It's brilliant. And the last one, actually, when you were talking, just which I would recommend, which was one of the first books I think I read when I was kind of diving into all of this, like trying to, personal growth stuff, was by Susan Jeffers, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway, which I absolutely bloody love. Again, it's something which we talk about all the time. It's like just getting comfortable with the uncomfortable. If you want to move forward, you've just got to put yourself in situations where it's like, shit, you know, I don't know if I can do it, but you feel that fear and you do it anyway. And that was a really good book for me, just to start opening my eyes to like, okay, there's more. I've got to really start pushing myself a bit harder and stop shrinking and playing small. You know, but if you want more, you've got to go get it and feel it and do it.
And ultimately, I think this is kind of why you and I do have these conversations, isn't it? It's because ultimately, this is exactly what we want to hopefully help people with. It's that feeling of, if you want more, if you don't, fine. But if you do, which I think so many people do when they're completely honest with themselves, you know, there are certain things. And again, going back to, you know, any one of these books that we've mentioned, there are so many overlapping. This is one thing I find just so interesting, is that there are, of all of the books that I've read, there are so many overlapping principles, you know, and they many of them come down to what is going on in your mind. How are you thinking? Like, this is really truly, it's the power of the mind, really, and just recognizing that the way that we are thinking truly is impacting, you know, the life that we see before us. And that plays into things like getting out of your comfort zone, because let's take, you know, something you and I've talked about before, like courage, or you know, like you were just saying, doing things that scare you, getting out of your comfort zone. It's very difficult to do those things if you haven't done the work on your mind, because it's only when you do that inner work that you then become better able to do those scary things that enable you to move your life forward. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Unless
absolutely.
you do that work on your own mind, you're constantly going to keep shrinking back, because your mind, as it currently is going to keep telling you, no, that's not safe, don't do that, no, I'm going to make a dick of myself, blah, 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 and all of these things. But when you start reading the books, the likes of which you and I are talking about, and you start putting some of these concepts and ideas into practice, you just become, you're changing the way you think. And that's the thing. It's like, you know, we all know this idea that change has to come from within. You know, change has to start with you first. Change, if we want change in our lives, it's not about so much changing what's going on outside of us. It's about changing what's going on inside of us. That is the beginning of any significant change in our lives. So yeah, and these books are all out here for us. You know, there is so much amazing information out there that can change your goddamn life.
Yeah, I must admit, I had many years of being absolutely obsessed by reading like book after book after book. And then actually, more recently, I started because I love a novel as well. I do love a novel. And I wasn't reading any novels whatsoever. And so now I try and kind of put a novel in amongst it all, because also that is just so enjoyable sometimes, just to read a novel, read some fiction, and just escape from the world and really indulge yourself. So yeah, I kind of try now to get a real blend of the both. So
yeah, I'm really bad at that, although I am trying to read at the moment All the Light We Cannot See. Have you read that?
No, but I know I do know the story. Yes,
it's meant to be amazing, and I've just started it, so
yeah. Right, well, there we go.
Yeah,
All done. Thank you, anyone who was listening, watching. This will be on our podcast at some point.
yeah.
And yeah, we'll see
We'll be back on
you
Monday.
next time. Yeah, all right,
All right,
my love.
lots of
Take
love.
care.
Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.